Dawn.com, 2nd of October 2022, in the history of Lahore, the Mongol sack. Pakistan is now a country, but in the past, it was likely one of the most critical intersections in history. This means many great kings with massive armies have crossed these lands and many countries. These kings and their armies were tested by the bravery of those who lived there and fought to protect their homeland. In 1241 CE, vast groups of Mongols came into Punjab and attacked the famous city of Lahore. This is one story of bravery. As the city walls began to fall apart in front of the Mongols, the ordinary people of Lahore, who did not have a leader or an army and were surrounded, raised their swords in defiance. This was something that no other country had ever done before when facing the Mongols. They come from South Asia. When the Mongol soldiers crossed the Jaxartes River for the first time in 1219 CE, everyone knew that a powerful new country had came to the old world and would destroy everything that came before it. The Mongols lived up to their image of being tough. They killed many vital cities and stole from people in Central Asia, which was mainly part of the Khamid Empire at the time. A young prince named Jalal al-Din Mingrani, the empire's most likely heir, fought hard against the Mongol march. The Mongols came to South Asia and what is now Pakistan for the first time when they went after the prince. The attack on Lahore by the Mongols in 1241 CE, made more accessible by problems within the Delhi Sultanate, was the first of many Mongol invasions into the Indus region that would change the course of South Asia. In 1221 CE, there was a half-hearted fight on the banks of the Indus River near Attock. The Khamid side lost, and the prince famously ran away by making his horse wade across the river. These events were seen by Genghis Khan, who is said to have told his shooters not to shoot at the prince. Not for long, though. Soon, he sent 20,000 horses with two generals, Dorbai Dokshan and Balanoyan, to chase the prince. The prince was never caught, and he was doomed to die almost 10 years later, near where Iraq is now. But Genghis Khan's generals had now reached the Indus region and were looking at the busy city of Multan. At that time, the town was run by a Turkic master named Nasiruddin Kabacha, who, for a short time, created an independent state that stretched from Multan to the Arabian Sea. The Mongols surrounded Multan. Before the Mongols lifted their siege and left, the city walls were only an inch away from falling completely. The unbearable summer heat had already done this. They did, however, leave only after destroying a lot of southern Punjab and taking a lot of stolen goods to Ghazni. Mongol raids into South Asia began with the raid of Dorbai and Bala and went on for almost 200 years, leaving the Indus region wholly destroyed. 20 years later, in the winter of 1241 CE, the worst of these strikes was about to happen. Internal parts. Soon after Dorbai and Bala's raid, the Turkic Sultan Iltutmish of the Delhi Sultanate drove Kabacha out of his base and took over his lands in southern Punjab and Sindh. This ended Kabacha's threats to northern Punjab, especially to Lahore. By doing this, Sultan Iltutmish got rid of one of the last things standing in the way of his unified rule. He then established a strong and stable sultanate that would rule most modern-day Pakistan and northern India, with its capital in Delhi. During Sultan Iltutmish's 26-year rule, a solid Muslim state grew over the Indo-Gangetic plains. There was a balance between peace inside the country and security outside it. But this sensitive balance was almost lost when Iltutmish died in 1236 CE. His son, who couldn't do the job, took his place and was quickly removed. Then Raziatu-Dunya Waldeen, Iltutmish's daughter known as Razia Sultana, took the throne. Razia was an intelligent queen and politician who disproved those who didn't believe in her power by putting down several revolts. As a wholly independent queen, she ruled with all the power and fairness her father used to have. Razia Sultana's failure was caused mainly by her independence and strong will as a female monarch. While the Turkic aristocracy used to serve her father with honor, they didn't like how stubborn she was and planned to get rid of her and put her half-brother Muizuddin Bahram on the throne of Delhi in her place. The plan began in 1239 CE, and by the following year, Razia had been killed, and her half-brother had taken her place. However, he turned out to be another weak puppet leader. In 1241 CE, news came from the western border of the Sultanate that vast groups of Mongols were crossing the Hindu Kush mountains and headed toward an empire that was too divided to defend itself. Bahram was weak, and the Turkic nobility made things unstable. Aim for Lahore. A giant dust storm came from the Hindu Kush mountains in the winter of 1241 CE. Large Mongol armies crossed the Indus and reached Punjab. Dair Noyan was in charge of these armies. The commander's first plan was to attack the city of Multan, but as he got closer, he learned that the city governor had assembled a giant army to fight the Mongols. These facts changed the Mongolian commander's natural inclinations, and he turned his attention north to Lahore, another city in Punjab that wasn't well protected and hadn't been attacked by the Mongols before. We know a lot about what happened during the Mongol attack on Lahore from the Tabaqat-i-Nasiri of the historian Manaj al-Siraj Juzjani, who lived in the 1300s and wrote this massive work of history about 20 years after the events that he wrote about. He wrote that Ikhtiaruddin Karakash, the Turkic ruler of Lahore, was not ready for the chaos that had come riding into his city. Many people living in the town were merchants and traders who were already very far away, doing business in faraway places, many of which were part of the Mongol Empire, which was funny. Juzjani said those who stayed did not work well or act together enough to create strong opposition. The city under attack also had no war supplies or food to survive the winter. Most importantly, it didn't have the weapons and guns to fight back. For example, the army that should have been sent from Delhi to protect the city was never put together because of politics within the Sultanate. As time went on, the Mongols' attacks got stronger. With each hit, their catapults broke through the city walls even more, bringing the people of Lahore closer to the end of the world. People didn't want to work together, and the city's defenses were about to fall apart. Karakash devised a selfish plan that kept him out of harm's way. The death of Lahore. The governor left Lahore in the middle of the night under the guise of a secret attack on the Mongol camps. He marched through the sleeping Mongol camps to get to Delhi, which he miraculously made it to. As dawn came and word spread that Karakash had run away, the city's people were left to their own devices and were at the mercy of the bandits who lived outside the city walls. The Mongols were naturally more determined to take the city. Their strikes got more robust as they became more persistent, and their catapults hit the city walls in a way that had never been seen before. Finally, the city's defenses gave way, and the last thing that stood between the Mongol raiders and Lahore was gone. Like a sea, the Mongols entered Lahore on December 22, 1241 CE. Wave after wave of soldiers on horses carrying spears, shields, and swords came in from all directions. There was something in the hearts of the men of Lahore that flickered when they knew they were going to die or be completely wiped out. Anyone who could quickly grab a weapon did so, and everyone willing to do so marched out in front of the Mongol sea to stop it. An unusual event took place. The ordinary people and citizens of Lahore fought against the Mongol hordes to help their helpless city-dwelling brothers and sisters. There were fierce battles in every street and alley of the city. People from Lahore stood out in the battles that followed because they were brave. One group was led by Aksunkar, which means White Falcon, and was made up of men from Lahore's Kotwal, fort commander, and the other was led by Dinder Muhammad, who was in charge of the cavalry and fought with his sons. Juzjani uses these words to explain how brave the two groups were. Two groups of Muslims in that disaster wrapped their lives around their waists and firmly gripped their swords. They continued to wield the sword and send the Mongols to hell until both bodies, having bravely fought for a long time against the infidels, reached the happiness of martyrdom. What to do aftermath? The historian Abu Nasr Muhammad wrote the Tarikh-i-Yamani, which says that after the fighting finished and the city fell, the Mongols killed all the people who lived there and forced the few who were spared to work as enslaved people. However, a considerable number of Mongols were also killed during the terrible plundering. The book lists 40,000 soldiers and 80,000 horses as having died. Even though this number is too high, the Mongols must have suffered many losses against the people of Lahore, who, according to Juzjani, included Dair Noyan, the Mongol leader. After the Mongols left, the city was briefly taken over by Khokar tribe members from the hills in the Khoai-Jud or Salt Range. These people were known for being wild and against Delhi's royal rule. After getting rid of the Khokars, Karakash quickly returned and found his beautiful city in complete ruin. It would stay that way until Emperor Balban came along and started rebuilding it. The terrible things in Lahore were just the start of more than 100 years of chaos caused by Mongol invasions of the Indus region. As early as 1245, Mongadu, one of Genghis Khan's favorite generals, led a new army that destroyed South Punjab. Soon after, many more Mongol armies swept further south into Sindh and destroyed everything in their path. Every year, vast groups of Mongols would attack the western borders of South Asia. Under the banner of the Chagatai Khanate, it didn't take long for the Mongols to make northern Punjab their stable home. Along with the complete breakdown of social and political order, vast areas of farming land were lost and turned into grassland when war horses and cattle from the nomadic Mongol way of life came to the Indus region. Until Tamerlane's terrible invasion in the late 1400s, people had to deal with frequent Mongol invasions, destruction and occasional counterattacks by the Delhi Sultanate. After that, there was a short period of local kingdoms before another conqueror came to Panipat in 1526 CE. This one was related to both Genghis Khan and Tamerlane. That ruler, whose name was Zahiruddin Babar, would change the history of South Asia for good.